What role does biotech play in helping to shape dermatology care? To discuss this topic in detail, I'm excited to be chatting with Dr. Reid Waldman, CEO of Veradermics, board certified dermatologist, and the latest member of the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, which is a recognition that is notably rare for a dermatologist. At Veradermics, a dermatology biotech company, Dr. Waldman is a focus developing novel therapeutics for under-innovated areas of dermatology. Today, we delve into Dr. Waldman's remarkable journey and discuss Veradermics' future in impacting dermatology care. So, Dr. Waldman, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Hannah, thank you for having me. So happy for this discussion. It's really great to be in front of a group of our peers talking about dermatology and the role that physicians can have in shaping the therapeutic landscape.
So being named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, which by the way was always a dream of mine, I didn't make it there though, particularly as the first board certified dermatologist to do so, is a significant achievement. What does this recognition mean to you?
Now, you're just telling me something I'd never heard before, which is that there are no other dermatologists. But I'll tell you, it has meant a lot in that I think it speaks to the work that we've done at Veradermics. I don't view it as being a personal recognition, but rather the incredible things that our team has accomplished over the last 4 years. And it's great to see recognition of the idea that physician entrepreneurs are able to delve in biotech, an area where usually, physicians are the ultimate consumer of many of these products. We often aren't involved in their development.
That's very true. So could you share your journey from being a dermatology resident to becoming the CEO at a young age of a biotech company in such a short time frame?
Absolutely. So really the origin of Veradermics is the idea that there are all of these conditions that we see on a nearly daily basis in clinical practice, for which there has been limited innovation over the past several decades and very limited innovation on the horizon. So we set out with the mindset that we could use our end user knowledge as physicians to identify therapeutics that address real treatment needs within dermatology. And early on, right, people say, how did this transition really occur? Early on, it was just a story. Like I just told you, this idea, hey, there's all these problems we're seeing. We know these are a problem. We know there has to be a better solution. And we spent the early days of the company really learning about the biotechnology industry, learning about, the processes of which, drugs come to fruition. And over time, we built an incredible team of, subject matter experts, people with tremendous experience. But one of our team members is responsible for the approval of one of the few novel topical therapeutics approved since 2020, Klisyri, that's Mike Smolinski. And so we brought these folks together and it had been developing from there. All throughout this, I think the idea that we are dermatologists has been critical to the company's success. It's allowed us to understand the markets in which we're working, the needs that we're working with. And I think as we have moved into clinical development, it's allowed us to design better trials and manage those trials effectively.
It's really incredible. At Veradermics, you're tackling varied areas in dermatology, including warts, hair loss, which is a big one for a lot of men and women, molluscum, and atopic dermatitis, just to name a few areas. As a new biotech firm, how do you manage products across these diverse fields? You're not just tackling one area of dermatology, and we know that there are so many diseases. So I'm really curious how you're able to manage and diversify. And is there a unified strategy or approach behind this execution?
Absolutely. So diversification is the cornerstone of Veradermics, and that's not just diversification by therapeutic area, by chemical entity, but also diversification across multiple types of drug delivery. We have oral formulations, topical formulations, and we even ran the largest clinical trial ever conducted with a dissolvable microneedle patch. The reason that we view diversification as being so critical is that as we think about each of these, we use that physician-led approach to identify the therapeutic areas that we work in. really we recognize each of them requires a different approach. And we try to always think, at the end of the day, what is it? What is the need that the prescriber has that we're addressing to motivate a change in prescribing habits? And what is the need that the patient has to motivate them to actually use this product, be adherent to this product, and for this to be something that makes a meaningful difference within the field? The unification of these products all comes in dermatology, right? Each of these is a dermatologic asset, even though we work across a variety of different areas.
So while you were in residency, were you, seeing patients and saying, I see an opportunity here. There's really no, I know you're working on a Band-Aid for warts, which is a really great idea. Is that something that kind of like came to fruition while you were in clinical practice and residency?
So I wish I could say that's how it worked, or that I had some foresight that this is, how things were going to go. And if I said that, I would be lying. I think that while, I was in residency, while I was in early practice, I developed a love for clinical research and an understanding of the impact that clinical research has. And one, research endeavor in particular, I think is what motivated me to start looking more in the clinical trial arena. And I thought my career was going to be, as a trialist. And that was that, we did a multi-center study looking at the use of dupilumab for bullous pemphigoid. And then I saw that translated into much wider use of that therapeutic for that indication. And that was very exciting. Ultimately, at that time, if I told you I had any idea that we were going to go on to start a company, that we were going to go on to start a company that raised money, and that we were going to dose lots of people with novel therapeutics, I don't know that I would have believed that.
Well, you focused on advancing first-in-class therapeutics for under-innovated dermatology markets, like I mentioned, warts and hair loss. Why did you think that these were areas that either needed to be focused on more or are areas that were previously ignored by other biotech companies?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the latter question first and then the former, which is that, essentially when we look at derm pharma over the last several decades, most of what has been developed is you take a cream and you turn it into a gel, or a gel into an ointment, or you take, this acne topical and you mix it with that acne topical, and now it's a new topical. And for a long time, that had been a successful business model within dermatology, and it heralded many, many, many products. But we saw really a paucity of true innovation. And so when we set out, one of the general guiding themes was the idea that we want these therapeutics to address a real need, something that people are saying, hey, I'm worried about this, whether that's the physician, whether that's the patient, as opposed to saying, well, this is a little different than what existed previously. In terms of how we picked these areas, there were areas of personal frustration. I mean, I think about warts, right? I see those every day. And every time I think about warts, I think about holding down a screaming child, parent is holding them, medical assistant is holding them. I'm, doing something terrible to them. And then the idea that it doesn't work many times. And you just have to ask yourself, there's got to be something better here. And that's really what has driven us, is these scenarios where during day-to-day clinical practice you're going, this really can't be like the best solution here. And that's where we're heading.
Also, warts could be quite frustrating for the parents because it's typically not a one-time visit. You have to return to the clinic several times. So it's very convenient not to have to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, you bring up, one of the critical elements of the needs, which is that there's needs related to efficacy, there's needs related to safety. But when we think about the variety of stakeholders, right, you bring up the parent, if they have to keep taking off work to go in to get something frozen, there's not just the economic cost of them, paying for the office visit. There's the economic cost of them not being able to go to work. There's the cost of the kid missing school. There's the frustration. It really is these large problems that I think will ultimately translate to people being very excited about a new therapeutic, and to us seeing essentially a major transition towards some of the products we're trying to bring to market.
So you mentioned a lot about warts. What about hair loss?
Yeah, so hair loss is to me probably one of the more exciting areas that we work. And I say that because I am in the early stages of losing my hair. And I tell the team that there is nothing more disheartening than the first time I felt a raindrop on my scalp, which when you have a full head of hair is not something that should occur. And it's interesting because my brother, who's 6 years my senior, is losing his hair. My father is very much bald. And, it's one of those things you feel no control over. I'm looking in the mirror, I'm seeing a decrease in density, and we've had no innovation in 20 plus years, right? There's one oral therapeutic approved, Propecia or finasteride. It's only approved in men. The reason it's only approved in men is they ran a phase 2 program in women. It didn't work. And now we're in a position where men are often hesitant to take it out of concern for sexual side effects. In fact, one of the only patient complaints I ever received as a dermatologist was a letter from a patient about a finasteride prescription saying that I prescribed them something that they couldn't believe I'd give them something that would affect their sperm quality. And so, there's not been innovation. There is a need for an oral therapeutic that is non-hormonal, that is effective for both men and women, and that is safe. And when we went out to prescribers, and we've done quite a bit of discovery with key opinion leaders in the field, what we hear is there's no entrenched standard of care, that, in women especially, there's a lack of oral therapeutic option, and that in both populations, people are really willing to try something new. And I would guess that as a result of this podcast, I'm going to get multiple LinkedIn messages saying, hey, when's the trial? When's the trial? Can I join the trial? Because this is something that really bothers people, myself included.
Yeah, you could add me to the list. So what challenges are you facing as you develop drugs in this space?
I think that there are different types of challenges. There's technical challenges related to the actual development of the therapeutics. And then there are the challenges of growing a corporate enterprise. And, we've been fortunate. We have a really tremendous team of developers who have worked on major products, as I mentioned. And so a lot of what I currently, face as a day-to-day challenge is the idea that 2024 is going to be an even bigger year for us than 2023. And how do you grow the business, scale the business to accommodate those needs? We're looking at initiating this phase 3 program. We're hoping to dose, many patients with our therapeutics. And in doing so, you need the personnel, you need the infrastructure to be able to handle that hockey sticking increase in activities. And that, I think is the challenge that we currently work on, although I think it's a very exciting challenge to face.
So one of your drugs is currently in phase 2 clinical trials for treating common warts. Could you, I don't know legally what you're allowed to share, but could you provide insights into your approach, particularly regarding the use of immunostimulatory dissolvable microarrays for drug delivery?
Absolutely. So that's our flagship program, which is for common warts. And as you mentioned, it's actively dosing in a phase 2 study. The idea there is that we took a known immune stimulant, Candida antigen extract. We incorporated a known effective dose of that, that's injected in clinics across America, into this dissolvable microarray. And the idea is that this microarray, which, as you mentioned, looks like a Band-Aid and is applied in a process that's virtually painless, is a very exciting way to deliver, this known effective treatment. And that essentially you put it on like a Band-Aid in a process that's virtually painless. It stays there for several minutes, not hours, not days, several minutes. You take it off, you dispose of it. And the little needles, which I don't like the word needle anymore. We call it a microarray because there's nothing scary about this. And they're not truly needles. They dissolve in the skin. They melt like icicles in the skin, releasing, that dose of immune stimulant. The goal being to create, local immune stimulation that uncovers the human papillomavirus, which causes warts, leading to wart resolution. Again, currently in the middle of a trial, the goal is to wrap up that trial towards the end of 2024.
I'm very excited to hear more about it and to see it. So, we did touch upon hair, and I'm wondering if you could share more. I understand that you're really working towards finding some hair loss treatments that are non-hormonal. Could you share more about what that approach looks like? I'm not sure if we could touch that area yet, but if we could share a little bit about how you're getting to that non-hormonal pathway, that would be really great for our audience.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. What I can share at this point is as follows. One, we're working on an oral therapeutic. I think it's really important when we think about hair loss that oral therapeutics are certainly the preferred approach among people suffering from the condition. I always challenge people who ask about that to go buy Rogaine at the store and put it on twice a day for a week. And I say, if you are able to put it on all 14 times, I'll buy you dinner. So far, no one's gotten a free dinner out of that interaction. And so oral therapeutic, I think, is really important, right? Rogaine has a discontinuation rate of close to 90%. I think a lot of that is the idea that if you put something that, is conspicuous in your hair to treat an aesthetic indication, it certainly doesn't go well. You then mentioned part number 2, which is that it's non-hormonal. Why non-hormonal? Well, we talked a little about propecia, and propecia's deleterious sexual side effects in men. But I think one of the things that is increasingly becoming apparent is that hormonal therapeutics, and when I say hormonal, I should say androgen-related therapeutics, are not an effective treatment, or not a massively effective treatment for hair loss in women. And I say that because in finasteride 1 milligrams phase 2 regulatory program, they were not able to achieve statistical significance. In Cassiopeia's Cosmos clascoterone solution regulatory program in females, they were not able to achieve statistical significance. So we're looking at these things that are targeting androgens, and they don't seem, at least in a regulatory environment, to be able to meaningfully grow hair in women. And we know that 71% of people who seek treatment for hair loss are women, even though hair loss is thought of as being more common in men.
Yeah, I always point that out to patients. I'm like, or even to my audience. I think when marketing, it's always like a men's photo, and they think it only affects men because I think we always have to appreciate that it's more acceptable for a man to be bald and less acceptable for a female, but it affects so many women and it's very emotional. And I have a very deep appreciation for hair. I did a hair loss clinical trials fellowship. So I always really want to drive home that hair loss affects both men and women. And I'm very excited that you're working on treatments for this. So as you continue to develop Veradermics, what is your vision for the company's future?
Yeah, so I think that the vision, right, the hope is that the future is very bright. As we advance these drugs into development, the ultimate goal is to have therapeutics get approved that make a real change in our area, and that I'm hoping that we can become the next great dermatology company. Of recent, there have not been very many biotechs in the dermatology landscape that have gone on to become legacy players. If you look at the biggest companies within our landscape, Almirall, Leo Pharma, Galderma, they've been around a long time. And we're hoping that we can become the true disruptive force for the specialty, and eventually bring numerous products to market that make a very, very big difference to people suffering from skin conditions.
And last question, when you're not working at Veradermics and figuring out the next impactful dermatology care treatment, what do you do for fun?
That's a great question. And today I'm going to do what I've been looking forward to months, because I'm back home in Kansas, which is that I'm going out to eat some barbecue after we get off this podcast today. Otherwise, I'd say my favorite thing is to travel, and I've been very fortunate to go some very interesting places recently. I have to say that my favorite of all of them so far is Hawaii. I still cannot believe that place actually exists. It's just the most relaxing, happiest place on earth.
Well, thank you so much, Reid, for joining us, and we're excited to see what comes in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate the willingness to include a story on Veradermics and to invite me on the podcast.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Derm Club Podcast. If you found the discussion today to be valuable, please subscribe and share. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode as we continue to delve into dermatology and skincare with the world experts.